Someone sent you a message today. Maybe an hour ago, maybe yesterday, maybe longer. They've checked their phone more than once. They saw you were active. They watched you post something. They saw you were online. And still, nothing. They probably won't say anything about it. People rarely do. But something shifted. Something small and quiet in how much they expect from you, in how much they'll offer next time. You didn't reject them. You didn't mean to. But from where they were sitting, it felt like you did. And that's what this video is about. Not the dramatic rejections, not the ones anyone would recognize. The ones that happen in the ordinary moments. The ones nobody names. The ones that add up. My name is Daniel Mercer, and one of the things I've noticed consistently in studying how relationships quietly deteriorate is that the behaviors that cause the most damage are rarely the dramatic ones. They're the small ones, the ones that have plausible explanations, the ones that could mean nothing and often mean everything. None of these feel like rejection to the person doing them, but they can communicate, without words, that the other person is not the priority right now. And when that happens repeatedly, without explanation, without repair, the other person doesn't always say something. They adjust. They expect less. They stop reaching. Number 1. Leaving messages on read. This one has become so normalized that most people don't even think of it as a choice, but it is. You read the message. You decide, consciously or not to respond yet. Maybe you're not in the mood. Maybe the conversation feels like effort. Maybe you want to create a little distance without having to say so. All of those are real reasons. None of them are visible to the person waiting. What they see is, you were there. You saw it. You chose not to respond. And in the absence of any explanation, their mind fills the gap, usually with the worst available interpretation. Eventually, being left on read doesn't feel like a delay. It feels like a signal. And people start to calibrate their expectations around that signal, reaching out less, sharing less, investing less. The relationship doesn't shrink in one moment. It shrinks in the space between the message and the reply that never came. Number 2. Watching their stories but not replying to messages. This one is specific to how we communicate now, and it carries a particular weight. You haven't replied to their message from 2 days ago, but you've watched every story they've posted since. They can see that. They know you're active. They know your presence online. And they know you chose not to respond to them directly. That gap between digital presence and personal silence communicates something very precise. It says, I'm available, just not to you, not right now. And even if that's not what you mean, even if it's thoughtlessness rather than intention, the message received is the same. You exist in their peripheral vision, but you're not looking back. Peripheral attention is not connection, but it's close enough to make the absence of real attention feel deliberate. Number 3. Answering the easy part and ignoring the rest. This one is harder to spot because you do respond. You just respond to the wrong thing. Someone sends a message with 2 layers, a practical question and something underneath it, something emotional or personal or slightly vulnerable. And you answer the practical question, thoroughly, helpfully, correctly, and you say nothing about the rest. From the inside, this feels like engagement. You replied. You were helpful. You addressed what they asked. But they didn't only ask a question. They also said something. And that something went unacknowledged. And the silence around it is its own kind of response. It says, I saw the question. I didn't see you. Over time, people stop including the second layer. They learn to send only what will be received. And what used to be a full message becomes half a message. And half a message is half a connection. Number 4. Reacting with emojis instead of responding. Someone sends you something real, something that mattered enough to share. And you respond with a heart, a thumbs up, a simple reaction that takes less than a second and communicates almost nothing. The emoji says, I saw it. It doesn't say, I received it. There's a difference between acknowledging something and engaging with it. And most people, on the receiving end of a reaction when they expected a response, feel that difference immediately, even if they couldn't name it. What they shared deserved words. It got a symbol. And symbols, however warm, don't create the feeling of being understood. After a while, people stop sharing things that deserve words, because they've learned what level of response to expect, and they start editing themselves before they even send anything, asking, "Is this worth it?" When the answer becomes consistently, "Probably not," something has already changed. Number 5. Changing the subject when something becomes personal. Someone says something real, something slightly vulnerable, maybe not dramatic, maybe just honest. They lower the tone of the conversation for a moment. They let something through. And instead of staying with it, you move the conversation somewhere safer. You make a joke. You ask a practical question. You mention something unrelated. From the inside, it feels harmless. You avoided awkwardness. You kept the mood light. But from the other side, it can feel like this. I gave you something real, and you handed it back unopened. They don't say anything. They adjust. They make a mental note, not consciously, not as a decision, that this is not a space where certain things land safely. So they stop bringing those things. And the conversation stays on the surface. And the surface, over time, is all that's left. Number 6. Responding to vulnerability with logic. Someone shares something difficult, something emotional, something that took some courage to say out loud. And your response is to solve it, to explain it, to reframe it rationally. You're not being cold. You're trying to help. But help and connection are not always the same thing. When someone is emotional, what they often need, before solutions, before perspective, before anything useful, is to feel that what they said landed, that it was received, that someone understood not just the content, but the weight of it. Logic in that moment can feel like a door closing, not because it's wrong, but because it arrives before the person has felt heard. People learn eventually. If I share something vulnerable here, I'll receive analysis. So they stop bringing the vulnerable things. And what's left, the safe topics, the surface conversations, starts to feel like the whole relationship. It isn't, but it becomes what's available. Number 7. Not reacting to good news. They come home, or they call, or they send a message, and they tell you something good happened, something they're excited about. You can hear it in how they wrote it, the extra exclamation mark, the voice slightly higher than usual. And you say, "Oh, nice," or "That's great," and move on to something else. What just happened in that moment is more important than it looks. Good moments are the ones people most want to share. Not problems, those come with their own urgency. Good moments are chosen. They're offered. Someone decided, I want this person to be part of this feeling. When that offer lands flat, when the excitement meets a neutral response and just sits there, the person doesn't stop being happy, but they stop wanting to share it with you. Not consciously, not as a decision. Just, next time something good happens, your name is slightly less likely to be the first one they reach for. Over time, you become someone they tell things to, not someone they share things with. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a relationship and a log. Here's what connects all 7 of these behaviors. None of them require bad intentions to create distance. You don't have to mean to leave someone on red. You don't have to decide to underwhelm them with their good news. You just have to not notice, or not prioritize, or be somewhere else when someone was expecting you to be present. And that's what makes these behaviors so hard to address. The person doing them often genuinely doesn't see the pattern, and the person receiving them often can't point to a single clear moment to describe what's happening. They just feel it. A growing sense that they are not quite seen, not quite received, present in the relationship, but not quite landing in it. And eventually, not dramatically, not with an announcement, they stop reaching. Just gradually, quietly, less. Here's the part I want you to hold on to. Every single one of these behaviors has an inside story, a reason, a context that makes it make sense. Maybe you were overwhelmed. Maybe you were trying to help. Maybe you were distracted, not indifferent. Those reasons are real. They matter, but they're invisible to the person on the other side. What they experience is not your reason. They experience your behavior. And behavior, repeated without repair, becomes the relationship's language, whether you intended it to or not. The gap between your intention and their experience, that's where disconnection lives. Not in the dramatic moments, in the ordinary ones, in the message you didn't reply to, in the story you watched instead, in the good news that deserved more than it got. If you saw yourself in any of this, I want to be clear about something. These behaviors don't make you someone who rejects people. They make you someone who hasn't yet seen what those behaviors communicate from the other side. That's a very different thing. The behaviors in this video are not character flaws. They're habits, formed in contexts that made sense, running on automatic in contexts where they cost more than you realize. And habits, unlike character, can be interrupted. Not perfectly, not immediately, but deliberately, one moment at a time. So here's the only practice I'd suggest. The next time you read a message and put the phone down, notice that. Just notice it. Ask, what's making me not reply right now? Is it capacity? Is it avoidance? Is it something that needs to be said instead of delayed? You don't have to reply immediately. You don't have to perform availability you don't have. But the people who matter, the ones whose messages you're leaving unread, whose good news you're half receiving, whose vulnerability you're solving instead of sitting with, they feel your presence or absence more than you know. Not because they're keeping score, because they care. And caring makes people sensitive to signals, especially the ones you're not aware you're sending. You don't have to get this perfect. You just have to notice, once, what it feels like to be on the other side of your own silence. And once you see that, you don't hear your silence the same way again.